So today we're going to trace the arc of a massive revolution. India's incredible journey from being a prized colonial possession to a free, independent nation. It's a story that starts with trade, gets defined by a whole lot of conflict, and ends with the birth of a nation.
And it all really kicks off with this one central question, which is kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. How did a private trading company, the English East India Company, actually manage to conquer a vast and powerful empire? I mean, it sounds completely impossible, right? But that's exactly what happened.
To understand how, you have to picture the scene. The story starts in an empire that was seriously in flux. For centuries, you had the mighty Mughal Empire dominating the subcontinent. But by the 1700s, it was starting to crack, weakened by internal fighting and just getting too big to manage. And that power vacuum? Well, it was like an open invitation for ambitious outsiders.
Let's just walk through how this all went down. In the early 1600s, it was purely about business, setting up trading posts or factories on the coast. But as the Mughal power started to fade, the company got pulled into local politics and wars. Now, the real game changer was the Battle of Buxar in 1764. After winning that, the company was granted Diwani rights. That's huge. It basically means they got the right to collect taxes, which turned them from traders into rulers. Then the subsidiary alliance system really sealed the deal, forcing local rulers to pay for British protection, which of course made them completely dependent.
So this system of company rule just kept growing for almost 100 years. But, this kind of rapid takeover creates a lot of anger over stolen lands, crazy high taxes, and just a total disrespect for local culture. By the mid-1800s, that anger was just simmering right below the surface, and in 1857, it finally found a spark. And that spark ignited a fire that would change India forever.
It all started as a mutiny among the Indian soldiers, the sepoys. The trigger was a rumor about new rifle cartridges being greased with animal fat, which was deeply offensive to both Hindus and Muslims. But what started with soldiers quickly exploded into a massive, full-scale rebellion. This wasn't just a military thing anymore. Peasants, artisans, local leaders, everybody joined in, channeling all their anger against British rule into one huge popular revolt.
And what's so fascinating here is just the power of perspective. To the British, this was just the Sepoy Mutiny, a small, selfish betrayal by some ungrateful soldiers. But for Indian nationalists, it was something much, much bigger, the First War of Independence. You have the exact same event, but two totally different stories. It just shows you the massive gap in understanding between the people in charge and the people they ruled.
In the end, the revolt was crushed, but it fundamentally changed how Britain ruled India. The East India Company was gone, dissolved. The British Crown took direct control, and this marks the official start of what's known as the British Raj. The army was completely shaken up to make sure nothing like this could ever happen again. But even with all the promises to respect local rulers, a new, bitter reality had set in, a deep and ugly racial divide that would last for generations. The failure of the 1857 revolt taught a really crucial lesson. Fighting with guns alone just wasn't going to cut it. The next phase of the freedom movement had to be different. It would be fought not just on the battlefield, but in people's minds, with a powerful new idea. The idea of a single, unified Indian nation.
So, in the late 19th century, something new started to happen. A new Indian middle class, educated in Western-style schools, began to appear. They started forming political groups, not to violently overthrow the British, but to petition them, to argue for more rights and a bigger say in their own country. This was the real groundwork for a national movement.
And the first big test of this new political energy was the Swadeshi movement. The core idea was simple, but really powerful. Swadeshi, which means self-reliance. It was basically an economic war, designed to hit the British Empire right where it hurt the most, its wallet.
And you can see here exactly how they did it. Step 1 was boycotting foreign goods, often with these huge, dramatic public burnings of foreign cloth. But it was more than that. It was about mobilizing everyone, organizing huge meetings and marches, singing patriotic songs, and they even created their own volunteer groups, called samitis, to build a whole new social and political structure from the ground up.
The Swadeshi movement really showed the potential of getting the masses involved. But it would take a totally new kind of leader, with the revolutionary new philosophy, to turn that potential into a force that could really, truly shake the foundations of the British Empire.
And that leader, of course, was Mahatma Gandhi. This quote from the British scholar Gilbert Murray just perfectly captures what made him so different. Think about it. How do you defeat an enemy whose body, which you can always conquer, gives you so little purchase upon his soul? That was the deeply uncomfortable question Gandhi presented to the entire British Empire.
His weapon of choice was satyagraha, which literally translates to truth force. Now, this was not passive resistance. This wasn't about just sitting back and taking it. No, this was an active, courageous, and direct confrontation with injustice, all done through nonviolence. It was a moral and political masterstroke that turned the freedom struggle into a true mass movement that involved millions of ordinary people.
But here's the thing about Gandhi. Before launching his biggest campaign yet, he first tried to negotiate. He actually went to the British government with a list of 11 very practical demands, reforms that would make life easier for regular people. But they were ignored, and that's when he decided to move to his next step.
And that next step was the Salt March. Honestly, the brilliance of this was its simplicity. See, the British controlled every aspect of salt, its production, its sale. It was a basic necessity of life. So by marching 240 miles to the sea to make his own salt, Gandhi was committing a simple, powerful act of defiance that absolutely everyone could understand. It was a symbolic rejection of British law itself.
The civil disobedience movement absolutely rattled the empire. By the 1940s, Indian independence started to feel less like a distant dream and more like something that was just inevitable. But as freedom got closer, the very unity that had made the movement so strong began to crack.
You had this perfect storm of factors that just sped up the end of the Raj. World War II had left Britain exhausted, financially and morally. Inside India, the Quit India movement of 1942 was creating massive, relentless pressure. And outside, you had Subhash Chandra Bose's Indian National Army fighting against the British. And then, crucially, you had the Muslim League's demand for a separate homeland, Pakistan, which had become a political line in the sand.
So by 1947, the question was no longer if India would be free, it was how. Independence was right there, on the horizon, but it came with this huge, terrifying question mark attached. What was this all going to cost?
And this was the answer. The Mountbatten Plan. It was a cold, pragmatic, and incredibly fast solution. The decision was made. India would be partitioned. The massive provinces of Punjab and Bengal would be sliced in two, creating two new countries, India and Pakistan. And it would all happen on a hastily chosen date, August 15th, 1947.
And so, at the stroke of midnight, India woke up to freedom. But it was a freedom born alongside a twin, Pakistan. And it was delivered through the unimaginable trauma of one of the largest and most violent mass migrations in all of human history.
And that leaves us with this final thought to chew on. The long, winding arc of India's revolution shows us what it takes to build a nation out of a colony. It takes decades of struggle, incredible sacrifice, and moments